Well, here we are again, just a couple weeks out from another election.
Yeah,
And honestly, I'm still processing everything.
I hear you.
I know a lot of you out there listening are interested in
Mm-hmm.
taking a deep dive into the gender dynamics that were
Yeah.
so central to this election.
Absolutely.
And frankly, there's a lot to unpack.
No kidding.
Trump won again by a hair,
Can you believe it?
despite over 20 accusations of sexual abuse
I know.
and 34 convictions. He's back in the White House.
It's unbelievable.
And the reaction has been, well, let's just say intense.
Definitely intense.
We've got articles here from The Atlantic,
Mhm.
The Washington Post, Newsweek,
Yeah.
The New Yorker. They all paint a pretty vivid picture of where we are.
For sure.
And it's not pretty
Nope.
to help make sense of it all.
Yeah.
We've got our expert with us.
Always happy to be here.
You always have such a knack for connecting the dots.
Well, I try.
So I'm really hoping you can shed some light on this for us.
I'll certainly do my best.
It's a complicated landscape, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So let's start with Trump.
Okay.
Even before the election, there were these incidents
Right.
that will really raise concerns about his behavior
Yeah.
and what it might say about his fitness for office.
Big concerns.
The Atlantic, for example, has this whole piece
Uh-huh.
on a rally in Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Apparently, Trump was having some microphone issues,
I remember that.
and he just completely lost it.
Sounds about right.
He started ranting about how angry he was,
Oh, geez.
threatening to knock the hell out of people backstage.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It's worth noting that anger management issues in leadership positions can be incredibly problematic.
For sure.
It raises questions about judgment,
Yeah.
impulse control,
Yeah.
and the ability to handle pressure effectively.
Couldn't agree more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the ranting.
Yeah.
He actually, and I can't believe I'm saying this,
This should be good.
used the microphone holder to simulate.
Oh, no, don't tell me.
Well, you can probably guess.
I don't even want to know.
Yes, it was a crude
Uh-huh.
and frankly disturbing display.
Yeah, I bet.
And what's even more concerning is the reaction from the crowd.
Oh, I can only imagine.
They laughed.
No way.
They cheered.
You're kidding.
It's almost as if this kind of behavior has become normalized,
Right.
something we just accept from our leaders.
It's scary, isn't it?
The Washington Post also covered that Milwaukee rally.
Uh-huh.
They highlighted how Trump's anger seemed to escalate throughout the event.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about the microphone.
Right.
It was like a simmering rage
Wow.
that kept bubbling to the surface.
Yikes.
And then there was this other incident also reported on by the Washington Post.
Oh.
This one was at a rally in Greensboro
Mm-hmm.
where someone in the crowd shouted
Oh,
this really vulgar comment about Vice President Harris,
oh, geez.
calling her a, well, I won't repeat it.
I've
It
got-
was
no.
disgusting.
I'm sure it was.
But what was even more disturbing was Trump's reaction.
Oh, boy. What did he do?
He just laughed it off.
Are you serious?
Like it was a joke.
Unbelievable.
That kind of response
Yeah.
sends a dangerous message.
Absolutely.
By laughing at such a vile comment,
Right.
he's essentially condoning it,
Exactly.
signaling that it's acceptable to talk about women,
Yeah.
even those in positions of power,
Right.
in such degrading terms.
It's awful.
And it's not just these isolated incidents.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the accusations, the
Mhm.
convictions.
Right.
This pattern of behavior goes way back.
It certainly does.
Right.
And it's impossible to ignore the larger context here.
Yeah.
We've seen a resurgence of this kind of aggressive masculinity,
Hmm.
a backlash against the progress that's been made in
Yes.
terms of gender equality.
For sure.
And Trump, whether intentionally or not,
Right.
has become a symbol of that backlash.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah. And it's particularly troubling given the fact that only about half the country even bothered to vote this time around.
Wow.
You have to wonder what that says about the state of our democracy.
It's like people are either exhausted by the constant chaos or they've just completely lost faith in the system.
It's discouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But for those who did vote for Trump,
Right.
knowing everything we know about him,
I know.
it really makes you question their motivations.
It really does.
What do you think is going on there?
Well, it speaks to the power of tribalism
Uh-huh.
and identity politics.
Okay.
For some, the desire to align with their chosen group,
Right.
their tribe,
Their tribe.
overrides any concerns about individual character or behavior.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how did the Harris campaign even begin to address all of this?
Right.
I mean, they were facing an uphill battle from the start.
Absolutely.
Newsweek had this article about a Harris campaign ad
Uh-huh.
that encouraged wives to vote their conscience.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It seemed pretty innocuous to me,
Yeah.
but it caused a huge uproar among conservative commentators.
Big time.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think it tapped into a deep-seated fear among certain segments of the population.
Yeah.
The fear of women asserting their independence,
I see.
making their own choices,
Huh.
and potentially disrupting the traditional power dynamic.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Fox News personalities like Jesse Waters and Charlie Kirk really went off on that ad.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Waters actually compared his wife voting for Harris to having an affair.
I remember that. I couldn't believe he said
Oh,
that.
yeah, it was pretty out there.
It's a ridiculous comparison, of course,
It is.
but it highlights the way that some people view women's autonomy as a threat.
Right.
It's as if they believe women shouldn't have the right to make their own political decisions,
Yeah.
especially if those decisions don't align with their husband's views.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
they're still living in the 1950s.
And the New Yorker article we have here touches on how the Harris campaign felt the need
Yeah.
to explicitly remind women that they could vote for whomever they wanted.
It's crazy, right?
Like, it was something they even had to say out loud.
I know.
It's a sad commentary on the state of our political discourse,
It is.
that such a basic right had to be reasserted.
For sure.
But it speaks to the climate of fear and intimidation that had been cultivated,
Hmm.
particularly towards women who dared to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
So what do you make of all this?
Well,
Was the Harris campaign's approach effective?
Hmm.
They did, after all, lose the election.
it's hard to say definitively whether a different approach would have yielded a different outcome.
Okay.
They were up against incredibly powerful forces,
Right.
deep-seated sexism, a media landscape that often amplified those biases,
Right.
and a well-oiled disinformation machine
Yeah.
that targeted Harris relentlessly.
Social media was brutal.
I know, it was tough out there.
I mean, the memes, the disinformation,
Yeah,
the outright harassment directed at Harris.
it was awful.
It was kind
Social media has become a breeding ground for this kind of toxic masculinity and
Right.
misogynistic attacks.
For sure.
It provides a platform for these harmful ideas to spread unchecked,
Yeah.
often with devastating consequences.
And into this already volatile mix, we saw the rise of the 4B movement.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure.
For those who might not be familiar with it, can you explain what 4B is all about?
Essentially, 4B stands for the 4Bs.
Okay.
No marriage,
Yeah.
no kids,
Uh-huh.
no dating,
Okay.
no sex with men.
It's a pretty radical stance.
It is.
So where did this come from?
Well, it emerged in South Korea,
Oh.
where women face immense pressures around marriage,
Uh-huh.
motherhood,
Right.
career.
I see.
It's a reaction to deeply ingrained patriarchal structures
Wow.
and a sense of hopelessness about achieving equality within the existing system.
So it's a complete withdrawal from traditional relationship structures.
It's a way of saying, we're done with this system, we're creating our own path.
Exactly.
And it's gaining traction globally,
It is.
particularly among younger women who are disillusioned with the status quo.
Yeah.
The Vanity Fair article we have here even connects the rise of 4B in the U.S. to the Magie movement's obsession with masculinity
Wow.
and the perceived attacks on women's rights.
Yeah, for sure.
There's definitely a sense that these movements are mirroring each other.
I agree.
The extreme right pushing this hyper-masculine agenda,
Right.
and then you have this segment of women saying, okay, fine, we're out.
Yeah, it's a pretty stark contrast.
So is 4B a viable solution? Or is it just a symptom of deeper societal problems?
That's a complex question.
Mm.
On one hand, it empowers women to take control of their lives
Right.
and reject societal expectations that often feel oppressive. On the other hand, it raises questions about separatism
Yeah.
and whether it truly addresses the root causes of inequality.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Not a simple issue. The New Yorker article dives into how 4B is also a response
Yeah,
to the very real issues women face on a daily basis.
absolutely.
Sexism, violence, economic disparities.
It's all connected.
It's not just about Trump.
Right.
It's about a system that often feels stacked against women.
Exactly.
And it's a system that in many ways seems to be regressing.
I agree.
We're seeing rollbacks on reproductive rights,
Mhm.
attacks on LGBTQ plus communities,
Yeah.
and a resurgence of traditional gender roles.
It's like we're going backwards.
It's no wonder some women are feeling disillusioned and looking
Yeah.
for alternative ways to live.
It's a natural response.
So here we are.
Yeah.
Trump's back in the White House, seemingly untouchable.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
The Harris campaign, despite its best efforts
Yeah.
couldn't overcome the deeply ingrained misogyny and
Yeah.
biases of the electorate.
It's disheartening.
And now we have this whole 4B movement gaining momentum,
Right.
a sign of just how fractured our society has become.
Yeah. It's pretty stark.
It's a lot to process,
It is.
but it feels like this is where we are.
It does, doesn't it?
It's a stark reminder that progress is not linear.
You got that right.
We can have moments of great advancement,
Uh-huh.
followed by periods of regression.
That's history.
It's up to each generation to continue the fight for equality.
Couldn't agree more.
So where do we go from here?
That's the question, isn't it?
What can we do to address these issues?
Yeah.
To bridge the divide, to create a more just
Right.
and equitable society for everyone?
It's a big task.
It really is.
It starts with awareness,
Yeah.
with understanding the complexities of these issues
Uh-huh.
and recognizing our own biases.
I see.
We need to have open and honest conversations,
Yeah.
even when they're uncomfortable.
That's so important.
It is.
And we need to be willing to challenge harmful stereotypes and behaviors,
For sure.
both in ourselves and in others.
Absolutely.
It's not enough to just be not sexist.
Right.
We have to actively work to dismantle the systems that perpetuate sexism and inequality.
You got it.
Absolutely.
And that includes supporting and amplifying the voices of those who are most marginalized and oppressed.
Yes.
We need to create spaces where women feel safe and empowered to speak their truth, to share their experiences, and to demand better.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks.
It's a long road ahead,
It is.
but I have to believe that change is possible.
Me too.
We've come a long way,
We have.
and we can't let the events of this election derail our progress.
I agree.
I think you're right.
We must learn from the past,
Yes.
acknowledge the present, and continue to fight for a future
Uh-huh.
where gender is no longer a barrier to opportunity or equality.
Well said.
Thank you.
And I think that's a great place to leave it for today.
Sounds good.
A lot to think about.
Definitely.
A lot to unpack.
For sure.
And a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the 2024 election and its aftermath.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back next week with another topic.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better world.